Alright, I got a bit of a different kind of video for you today. Not sure what it's going to do for views, but I want to talk about it, and that ain't nothing. But first, letting you know this portion of the video is brought to you by Pluto TV. Pluto TV is a free video streaming service that has hundreds of live channels and thousands of movies and TV shows on demand that are updated frequently. Everything from comedies, action, thriller, drama, true crime, game shows. They have The Price is Right with legendary host Bob Barker. I watch that show all the time. They also have CSI Miami that you can binge, so anytime I make a joke, a pun, and then go, on my channel, you can get the reference. So click the link below, download the free Pluto TV app. It's accessible on your smart TV, smartphone, tablet, any web browser. Once again, this portion of the video is brought to you by Pluto TV, and now, on to talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation. Which first, bit of a disclaimer, this is 5 of my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, not necessarily the top 5 episodes, because in making top 5 episodes, I can think of 20 episodes I'd want to be there. The kind of mental gymnastics it takes to whittle that down to the top 5 is probably why I've never done a Star Trek: The Next Generation video, never done a video on one of my favorite shows of all time. A couple of these episodes I think are in the echelon of top 5 greatest of all time, but I digress. These are just 5 of my favorites. Which, starting out this list, we're going to start out light. By light, I mean it's an episodic episode called Cause and Effect. The premise is really simple. It actually starts out like, what did I just watch? The Enterprise explodes, everyone dies, and then they're all playing poker and everything seems fine. Long story short, the Enterprise is in a time loop. They're reliving the same day over and over again. Same day for them. It's essentially 10 minutes or so for us. Unlike Bill Murray and Groundhog Day, they're not aware of it, save for this sense of deja vu that they kind of have. Maybe I really like this episode because I like it when things explain deja vu. But I think there's something profoundly talented about showing the same 10 minutes or so of a show over and over again and not having it feel redundant. The crew starts remembering more and more as time goes on. Beverly Crusher moves the glass to another location so she doesn't tip the glass over because she knows she's going to, then she ends up tipping it over anyway, showing constants and variables. It's one of these episodes in my yearly or so Next Generation binge. When it gets to Cause and Effect, I'm always like, oh sweet, just an enjoyable hour of television. My one thing is at the end of the episode, they find out they were stuck in this loop for about 2 weeks or so. I think it would have been kind of epic if they were stuck for about 100 years. Maybe 1 year, but you know, more than 2 weeks, but it is what it is. It doesn't matter. Could be 2 weeks. Could be 1,000 years. Point is, they were in it and then they get out of it. I wanted one episode in here that's just like enjoyable, 1 hour, locked in the entire time, never bored, time paradox. Now these next 4 episodes, I didn't notice when I made the list, but when I was going through the list, prepping to do a video on it, they're all Picard-centric episodes, which, again, unintentional. I guess just kind of shows how great the character of Jean-Luc Picard is. We're gonna start out heavy with a 2-parter Chain of Command. In this 2-parter, Jean-Luc Picard is part of an away mission with Beverly Crusher and Lieutenant Commander Worf, and then Picard gets captured by the Cardassians. Every 2-parter has that question of like, well, what's best? What's the best part of this 2-parter? The first part or the second part? With Chain of Command, as much as I love the Captain Jellicoe dynamic with Commander Riker, part 2 is the money. It's the dynamic between Sir Patrick Stewart and the late great David Warner. These two going head to head, toe to toe, and Picard being tortured for an entire hour is just, it's electrifying to watch. It's such a simple thing that the Cardassian wants Picard to do. He just wants him to say there are 5 lights, when in fact, there are only 4. That's it. Just a battle of wills. And that heartbreaking ending, that sit down that Picard has with Counselor Troy. Next Generation's great about having that last bit of dialogue that really hammers home the point, or a last scene of some sort, where he talks about he swore he could see 5 lights. But that shows that, thinking on how to phrase it, because I don't want to say he broke his mind, but he definitely affected Picard's mind for him to see 5 lights, but he never broke his spirit. And that's why he's Picard. Next up, we have an episode that, when I was a kid, was always in the top 5 greatest episodes conversation, any marathon, because as the seasons were going on, they would always have these marathons of Star Trek, and the Inner Light was always part of it. And I was always like, come on, where are the Borg? Bring on the Borg. But then I got older and I was like, oh wow, this is one of the only episodes, it might actually be the only Next Generation episode, that brings me to the brink of tears. In the Inner Light, the Enterprise comes across this probe that zaps Picard Picard just wakes up in this other place, this other planet. No one knows what the Enterprise is. They don't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what to make of the situation. It's quite clever to take a reprieve from Picard's experience on the planet and then go to the bridge for a couple minutes, and those couple minutes are years. You know that years are going by for this experience that Picard's having. And in the course of these years, he starts accepting his place on this planet. He starts thinking, maybe the Enterprise was all BS. Maybe it was a big fever hallucination I had at one point. He learns how to play the flute, and you notice how at first he's playing songs that he knows from Earth. You know, the Frere Jacques, he's playing Picard music. Then at a point you're like, that is not Earth music. That's music of this world. He's kind of resigned himself to this life. And it is a good life. You know, he has this wife who loves him. He has kids. He has grandkids. He lives this entire life that Jean-Luc Picard himself would never get to experience without this probe zapping him. He experiences the joy that this life has to offer, the pain that this life has to offer. Then he wakes up back on the bridge of the Enterprise, and the whole ordeal was about 25 minutes long. In 25 minutes, Picard lives an entire lifetime. And for me, the most important moment is that end moment when Riker's like, well, the probe shut down, but we found this inside, and it's his flute that he had on the world, you know, when he was living that life. I mean, the episode clearly sticks with the concept that this was a lifetime of memories, a life that he lived in 25 minutes. But if he didn't play the flute at the end, it being a crazy Star Trek scenario, the audience might have that leeway to be like, okay, so is it going to start fading from his memory? I imagine it's going to start fading from his memory, possibly. Him playing the flute at the end of the episode cuts that concept cold. There's no wiggle room to make that argument. That was just a lifetime of memories, and he will have them forever. And in every episode past The Inner Light where he plays his flute, I'm always loved that feeling of, that was a lifetime of memories. He still thinks about his kids that aren't around. It's an incredible episode, a very thought-provoking episode. I enjoy the fact that I just get something new out of it every time I watch it, and I get more out of it the older I get. Next up is the episode Tapestry. I'm not gonna lie, an episode with John Delancey as Q had to be on this list somewhere. Added bonus, it's one of my favorite episodes of Next Generation of all time. Episode starts out, Picard's been shot in the chest. He has an artificial heart, so he dies, and he gets to heaven, and Q is God. The reason Picard died is because he had that artificial heart. He got that artificial heart because when he was a really brash young cadet, he picked a fight with a group of Nausicaans at the Domjot table. Got stabbed right through the heart. So Q was like, if you could do it again, and Picard goes, things would be different. Q is giving him the opportunity to undo that mistake of his past, so he will not die. Here's the thing though. He undoes it. He avoids the fight at the Domjot table. He's back on the Enterprise as junior grade officer nobody. This is a very powerful and timeless lesson of life. Not only that, but it's also one of those moments that I realized, okay, so Q's not just a troll. He actually likes Picard, and he wants to help him. This is a moment where clearly Q is teaching Picard a very valuable lesson. And that lesson is you might have these moments in your past that you're ashamed of, these moments that you cringe when you think about. See, as much as people tend to reflect on the good of the past, the good and the bad, the successes and the mistakes, they all exist, and they all exist with purpose. You can't undo them. You pull at these unsightly threads and unravel the tapestry of your life. It's a great episode. Not only is it absurdly entertaining just in its premise and its execution, Sir Patrick Stewart and John Delancey, they're incredible together. But I suppose I didn't expect it either. I would expect the young, brash cadet backstory to be given to Riker. Giving it to Picard, completely unexpected. It's amazing seeing this great captain and the flawed past that he came from. Makes him so much more real, so much more human. It's one of the best episodes. And we're killing it off with the last one on this list, the end of the list. That would be Best of Both Worlds. Another two-parter. This was the season finale of season 3, rolling over to the season premiere of season 4. In season 2, Q introduced the Enterprise to the Borg, and at that point, it was known, well, the Borg know about us now, so they're going to be coming for us. All this time later, season finale of 3, they engage the Borg. And the Borg do what I don't think anyone expected. I was a kid when this episode came out, and it rocked my world. I remember being like, This This doesn't happen. The Borg capture Jean-Luc Picard and they assimilate him into the collective as Locutus of Borg. And this is a situation that forever stayed with Jean-Luc Picard. It was also the moment that Picard became, he went from the captain of the Enterprise's untouchable person to someone who could be hurt to this degree. And it ends with one of the biggest cliffhanger moments of all time.
Mr. Worf, fire.
Bye! See you after the summer. What? I had to wait a whole summer to find out what happened. This dude, I didn't know. I didn't know what I was gonna do. Whereas with Chain of Command, which is funny, both of those two-parters do put Jean-Luc Picard in a very vulnerable situation and hurt him to an extreme degree. But with Chain of Command, I feel part 2 is the strong part. Like, that's what I think of when I think of what I love about that two-parter. With Best of Both Worlds, it is part 1. It's that reveal when Picard turns and looks and you see that he's been assimilated into the collective. In all of Trek, this is one of the prominent moments. It's like you ever get the feeling that you're in an alternate reality? Like you just think, you're like, we're in the worst timeline. For the people in the world of Star Trek The Next Generation, this was the moment where they would forever feel like that. Jean-Luc Picard as Locutus destroying a myriad of Starfleet vessels is what springboards Deep Space Nine. But it is extremely heartbreaking in part 2 when, you know, Picard comes back and he has all the Borg implants and he's talking. And they said, what do you remember? How much do you remember? And he goes, everything. He just remembers everything. He remembers all the killing that he did and all the death and all the people and the ships that he destroyed. He'll never forget it. He carries it through the entire series. That's why in Star Trek First Contact, the movie, he's Captain Ahab. As Lily tells him, it's like, oh, Ahab has to go hunt his whale. And he does. He just wants to hurt the Borg because they hurt him. This two-parter brought a vulnerability to Jean-Luc Picard that never quit. It's always there. It's there from then to the end. All right, so that's my list of 5 of my favorite Star Trek episodes. Kind of a cheat because in these episodes there are two-parters. So it's essentially 7 episodes? Or whatever. It is what it is. Star Trek The Next Generation is, I think, one of the greatest shows ever made. It remains a yearly binge. I mean, it's not exactly a year, but every year or so, I'll just re-binge the series. And one thing remains, there's a constant, and that is I will get more out of that binge than I thought I could, you know? Like, at a point you think, oh, I know what the show is, I know what it's about, I know what these episodes are about, I know what they're going to give me, and somehow these episodes just give more. So I ask you, Star Trek The Next Generation, what are 5 of your favorite episodes? There's so many I didn't even talk about. Frame of Mind, Elementary, My Dear Data, Ship in a Bottle, Iborg, Measure of a... Okay. I could keep going. Well, depending on how much you guys like this video, maybe I'll do a part 2. And there you go. But what are 5 episodes that you love? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.